Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the ongoing adventure series, Interview with an Exorcist. I'm John Barnwell, and I'm here in the greater Detroit metropolitan area, along with Dr. Douglas Gabriel, explorer, adventurer, anthroposophist, exorcist, uh, extraordinary individual that I've had the pleasure to know since, I don't know, the late 1970s or so, and he's never ceased to amaze me, and he's my greatest pupil and my greatest teacher. And so, without further ado, I still have a flowered shirt on, so I think we're gonna still be a little bit in Hawaii. Hi, Douglas.
Hi, John. Yeah, I think we'll probably exit Hawaii today, but that's another tough thing for me to look at, and it's gonna make me cry probably, but that's okay. Now, you can't tell if you listen to this whether I'm trying to tell you to go to Hawaii, it's the greatest place in the world, or stay away from it, it will kill you. I'm telling you both. If you want to go to Hawaii, unless you're a brave, strong soul who's ready to be initiated and go through the earth, water, air, and fire initiations. The longer you stay there, you will go through them, whether you like it or not.
Well, that's why you had to live in Detroit for a while, just to be able to decompress so that you could bear the countenance of Hawaii.
And anytime I ran into any trouble, I'd just look at them and say, I'm from Detroit. And the people would back away. Because at that time, it was the murder capital of the universe. And it was so dark. And if you survived Detroit, I survived Detroit. We used to have T-shirts, of course. But the point is when you're going to Hawaii, if you want to go for a nice little vacation on a sandy beach, go to Kauai. And if you want to go to see a very bustling city and get the biggest waves probably in America, you go to Oahu, to the North Shore. But it's an island that is a city on an island. Over what, 1,200,000 people live there. It's terrible. And then if you want to go to where all of the beautiful people are, including Larry Ellison and Mark Zuckerberg and Oprah, all those great people, that's Maui. Yeah, don't go to Maui. I tell all my Maui friends now, get off now while you can, because it's an experiment at this point. And only if you're a brave soul should you go to the Big Island, and do not go out adventuring on your own if you go there. Matter of fact, I recommend going to the Hilton Waikoloa. It's when it was built, I was there when it was finished, just got finished. At that time, it was the largest resort in the world, and it had like these fantastic, huge marble statues. It had five the best swimming pools I've ever seen. It's had the ocean coming into its own bay inside of the I think there's four or five giant hotels, all connected by vaporettos, by water boats. You get on boats to go to to your room, or you go to one of the five restaurants, or you go to the dolphin swim. You don't need to go anywhere. If you want to just go to a little paradise, go there. Of course, the rooms are like $1,000 a night, but hey, I just went there. I just walk in, go out by the beach, pick up a towel because it's the color of the day, throw it over your shoulder, and walk around like you own the place, or just go to the restaurants. So if you go to the Big Island, if you go to Hilo, where there are many places that advertise you can come to paradise and you can, do these retreats in Hilo, are you going to give them an umbrella, or are they just going to sit in the rain? I mean, no, you go to the Kona coast, right? And literally, I was just thinking last night as I was thinking of saying aloha, goodbye to Hawaii in these talks. There's a lot of places. If I was a young person, I still would go and adventure, and they're all just as dangerous as the other ones. So, what was that about for me? What was that about? That was about initiation. Remember, I was leaving, going around the world, and stopped in Hawaii because of the Vajrayogini initiation and meeting Pele and falling down and going to hell for 3 days, which was an initiation of the earth. And so I stayed because why? Every single day I went to something totally cool, and I was into swimming a lot. So, I was snorkeling and swimming and boogie boarding and surfing and doing all this stuff in the water. And I started to count the other night how many times I almost died in the water. I A whole bunch, let's just say that. How many times did I feel I died through my earth initiation? Mm, that's hard to say because some of the worst parts I have yet to tell you. So then what's the air initiation? Well, I mentioned it to you before, if you've been listening to these. It's called VOG. It's the fumes that come up from the volcano filled with sulfuric acid and lots of other poisonous stuff, sulfur. And then if you get it in your mouth, you swallow it, sulfuric acid. And in the air, we lived on the helo side, the wet side of the island, of the big island. If the normal wind currents were happening, the fog blew right in our face. If there was no wind, there was no fog. If it was blowing the opposite way, it'd go to the Kona side. So we had to live every morning with the question of you'd wake up and you'd go, well, is it going to be a foggy day? Or is it going to be so clear that when you look up at the two big mountains, Mauna Loa and Mauna Kea, it makes you want to just cry because they're so beautiful. It really is. And you seldom get that picture. You seldom ever get to take a picture of both of the mountains at one time clear. But as I said before, the school I taught at in Lama Lama, I'd say 2-3 days a week, because I was the first one there, a rainbow would land in our playground. The end of the rainbow would land in the playground. So, one could believe you're in paradise, even though I was going through the earth and water and fire, earth, water, air, and fire initiations. So the VOG was that initiation of, well, if you want to be in paradise, you have to put up with this, which could kill you. And then, of course, the fire initiation we heard last time, meeting Pele. But, Vajrayogini dances in fire, transcendental wisdom, and is very much like the descriptions of Pele, and very much like if you took the descriptions of the Hawaiians of Pele and Jesus Christ and put them together and made him a woman, you kind of have what was being shown to me as these fire initiations. And so, of course, I got very overexposed to all of that. And then that fire initiation again took me to the point of essentially melting my organs down. So we'll get to that. But have you ever awakened in the morning and had blood coming out of all of your orifices? Well, that started to happen, and it wasn't a good thing. But that was years into being there. But first, I want to mention a couple other things before I say goodbye to Hawaii. And as you, as a listener, listening to a person who we'll just call psychic. So if you're psychic and you want to practice, it's the best place to practice and the best place to sometimes succeed or fail. So we would go literally all the time. I know many deserted ancient Hawaiian villages that still have all the fruit trees all planted around them, and nobody goes there. Macadamia nuts and kukui nuts and all these, these plants that grow forever, basically. So you could walk along the beach because nobody's on the beach in most of the Big Island because it's not a sandy beach. It's a beach that will kill you if you fall down. But if you walk along it, you'll come to these villages, which have huge, tall palm trees and surrounded by everything that they ate in those days, and also had fishing tide pools that they would create and stuff. So you could go and spend the whole weekend at one of these places without taking any food. All you had to take was, your shoes. Well, a swimsuit. And you could go to these places and just hang out there. Now, you know how many places there are like that on the Big Island? Countless. You know how many of those there are on the other islands? None. Not a one. So the Big Island is a place where I thought, well, good, I'll finally be able to be a hermit, real hermit. And so I did this. I'd go off, for weeks at a time and put up a blue tent in YPO Valley when no one ever came in those days, except down on a wagon pulled by horses up and down just to have a tourist attraction. I was at the back watching 1,000-foot tall waterfall fall into a stream, and I was right by the stream. So, I put up a blue tent All the fruit was all around me. All I had to do is go pick it, and that was that. But is that really what life is about? Or lying on that beach in Kauai where it's just beautiful, sandy? No, it's about advancement. So if you want to have the quickest advancement you can, go to the Big Island. Because when you travel, your karma comes up to meet you. So you go there, and you are definitely going to have some amazing encounters from the most fantastic resort that I know of, the Hilton Waikoloa on the Kona side, or these places that I've described that most people wouldn't even know that they existed, and they're right there on this little tiny island. Not a tiny island, but it's a small island, and it's an amazing, amazing place. So what I'm trying to tell you is the goddess lives, and she lives on the Big Island, and she lives every place there's a volcano spewing her blood, her magma, onto the earth to create the earth. And that's one thing I learned, that the earth in Hawaii is not really quite earth. It's not really earth. It's like a fiery earth. It's like Lemuria. It is a place of initiation. So if that's what you're into, well, you can go there and you can get your earth initiation. Just climb the mountains, climb Mauna Kea. It's 100% different than Mauna Loa, and you can do both in one day. And when you come down, it will change your perspective in life. Or go see the flowing volcano. Or if you scuba dive, even if you don't, you can take a submarine and go down and be surrounded by hundreds of sharks, all kinds of sharks, all kinds of sea animals. In Hawaii, there's even monk seals in some places, and they're seldom ever seen. But you can see all these amazing whales during the 4 months of the year of winter. They come down from Alaska to Hawaii, and they're prolific. So don't go looking for whales. Don't go to the Hawaiian Islands looking for whales unless it's November, December, January, February. And go right in the middle, and you'll get the largest amount of them. And all you have to do is go to Maui, get on the ferry going to Molokai, and you will see whales. Absolutely 100% if you go in those months. So in the water initiation, you find out that in Hawaii, there's no earth. The water falls on the lava, and the aquifer goes down to sea level, right? And flows, just flows into the sea. So we don't have water. We can't drill wells in the Big Island in some places, most places. And so you do what's called catchment. You use the roof of your house to catch the rain, because there's so much rain, 120 inches a year, and you fill up your big tank, and it's called catchment. Well, guess what happens when it rains through fog? It's creating poisonous water. Do you think that the Hawaiian, by the way, Hawaii is ruled by the Japanese who have come there. And the Hawaiians themselves are really they're a very low caste except for performances and entertainment, because they can still do the Hawaii culture, hula and the dance and the whole thing. So when you think about, well, why does this horrible stuff happen to Hawaii? It's because the Hawaiians aren't in charge. And I hope Maui becomes the leverage point, the breaking point where the Hawaiians say, no, okay, that's it. You've gone too far. Even though Dr. Semiana, the last kahuna nui, died after the passing ceremony that I've talked about. She died after that. And basically, I went back to the island after that a number of times, and basically it died. The whole movement. I knew some of those people, like the people who were basically the blood lineage of the last royalty of Hawaii. And they basically gave it all up. I think they should turn around and they should take it back. For instance, on one of the islands, towards the Marshall Islands, there is an island called Niihau. Well, what did they do to that island? Almost the whole island is a giant receptacle for nuclear waste. And it's got a giant dome on it. And now the dome is cracked. And so really potent nuclear waste is going to bleed into the ocean and kill the monk seals and kill all these endangered species in and around
Okay,
that
we could
island and
talk
other
about
places.
all this endangered species for a long time, but I want to say before John speaks, this when you say to people to come, that they can come and have this experience in Hawaii, I want to go, whoa, whoa. Your experience, and this is my opinion, is a metaphor for what people are going through right now in their lives. Our whole world is turned onto fire. And you do not need to travel to Hawaii to get this initiation experience. And in fact, this is why I wanted you to tell your story so people could see you. You're doing it in a way that we can visualize, right? But for a lot of people, it's what's going on in their head and their world immediate around us.
It becomes a point at which you have to come to terms with the question. The big question is what does it mean to be human? And the whole point of spiritual science or anthroposophy or Waldorf education, it's all about the kind of miraculous unfolding of being human. But we're set in the midst of a tempest. I mean, there's so many forces swirling around us, and that's why I decided yet on the last episode to read Rudolf Steiner's verse for the Michaelic Age, because it really does have to do with equanimity, that's where you're going to find that Christ center. And that's what's so important. It doesn't matter where on earth you are, because it's earth mystery in its entirety. And so people are immersed in this initiation, whether they like it or not. And so we're seeing this drama unfold, and what is it doing to us? And what are we doing in response is the ultimate test regarding this whole experience. And so these metaphors, these dramatic metaphors of Douglas's life, it's like what Tyler was saying, that we're going through this now, we're being tested. Can we be universally human, or are we going to pick a side and then get into the fray, getting caught up in that psychological struggle of polarity? Or are we going to be able to be truly human threefold beings, rise above it, and find equilibrium?
Absolutely. On the quest for the Grail is your I am. And as you're questing for it, you're looking for it. And we are oftentimes deluded by the fact that we have to chase all over the world to somehow pull together the pieces of a puzzle that is you. That's not really how it happens. I mean, if you are really trying to understand the earth as a whole, yeah, maybe you need to do that. You're an adventurer. But basically, anybody in your life that is standing next to you brings to you a vision of who you are. That's how we know who we are. Now, there's a thing that John said I forgot to do a couple times ago, and I need to address it because it fits in here. And that's the search for your own double. Now, this is a very complicated thing. First off, I don't believe that what people are talking about in modern times is their double or their doppelganger. I would call it your look-alike. Now, the question is, yes, you better be looking for your own double. It's the three-headed Cerberus that guards the way to the underworld. And it's your thinking, feeling, and willing that has been unconscious and hasn't been purified and hasn't been good. It's your negative karma. So then to take your negative karma, the double or the doppelganger, and to express that out in a materialistic way, to say that somewhere in the world there's someone exactly like you, and that if you encounter them, it's the end of the world, or it's the end of you, or whatever. Nobody can ever say what happens when you finally meet your double face to face and say, "Oh, you really do look like me." And the other person says the same exact thing. It's like you're talking to a mirror. Well, is there such a thing? Well, when you're on the big island, because the forces are just zooming up from literally below the bottom of the ocean all the way into the sky, literally, it's very easy to draw to yourself all kinds of strange encounters. Now, can a person do this in their life? Of course they can. They do it all the time. And more than likely, they have done it. they just didn't notice. And what I'm going to tell you what happened, but this happened to me one, two, three times before I got to Hawaii, and then twice in Hawaii. Now, here's the deal. My friend Gary, who I talk about, he had a little blue truck, and I had a motorcycle. Okay, that's key to this. And I'm at Wood Valley Temple getting the 3-week initiation into Vajrayogini with the top people, the king and queen of the Sakya tradition, the head monk, and Jetsun Kushala, the Tulku. So I'm like in a total amazing space, And there's a road that goes up to Wood Valley, it goes a little bit beyond. There's a couple deserted houses, and that's it. Wood Valley's way out there. It's in a forested area, but there's a road right by it. So I'm in the retreat house. And somehow I started to tell this story before. I'm there, and for whatever reason, I needed Gary's car, his truck. So I'm up there with his truck. And Gary said, no, don't worry. I'll hitchhike out there because in Hawaii, everyone in those days pick you up. So Gary goes and hitchhikes and then gets to this road that goes up the Wood Valley and is sitting on a wood log. And lo and behold, I show up in the blue truck. He gets in the blue truck, and for about 15 minutes it takes to drive up there, 15 minutes, he has a deep conversation with me, picking up where we left off last time, an anthroposophy, very deep questions, because he's a very deep anthroposophist. And so we're chatting back and forth the whole time, and then we come to Wood Valley, and he stops at the entrance right by the retreat house and says, okay. And Gary doesn't understand. He gets out of the truck, and I drive on, and then he turns around and sees me, and it blows his mind. I thought he was going to have a heart attack, and he couldn't speak for a while. And so I asked him, "What's going on? What's going on?" He goes, "You just gave me a ride here in my truck, and then I turned around and you're here, but I can see the truck pulling away. So what's going on?" He's completely blown. Now, this is my best friend. How could he not know that wasn't me? How did that guy who looks like me happen to have a little blue Toyota truck just like Gary's? I mean, exactly, beat up, everything. I mean, I saw the truck. I didn't see the person driving the truck. So he tells me this, and I can't believe it. But anyway, then for the next couple of weeks, I hear a motorcycle that comes up, slows down at the gate, and I look out and I go, oh my God, that's my motorcycle. It has my helmet. That's my leather jacket. That's me on my motorcycle. So I run out, and the person on the motorcycle would slow down just long enough for me to kind of get out there. And then when I get out there, he'd speed up so that we would never encounter. And he had the black dark thing over his face so you couldn't see the face. This happened at least a dozen times. Now, as I said before, the first time it happened, we jumped in the truck, chased him, but he had gotten down a ways, and it looked like he drove into the mountain and disappeared. There was nothing. The road ends. And then we checked all around, looking everywhere, nowhere to be found. So I didn't have a vehicle. I didn't have my motorcycle up there. So I didn't chase him when he'd come by in the motorcycle. But again and again, there were literally times I was 10 feet from this person, right? But I didn't get to meet them. Didn't get to see if the universe would explode or implode or whatever is supposed to happen when you see your lookalike. And then on Maui, another dear friend, you know him, Brian Leto. You can call him up right now and ask him this, because it's ridiculously stupid and unbelievable also. Once Brian went to Hawaii, as soon as he got there, he started working for the Haleakala Waldorf School, and he meets a guy in the library, the deep anthroposophist of the school, who's the librarian, who's this humble guy who he has endless talks with, who looks exactly like me, talks exactly like me.
Well, there's a clue there, though. He said he's this humble guy.
That's how you know the difference. Precisely. And then I'm like, well, is that the guy who was on the Big Island that Gary said was me? Is that? So then I thought back, and the reality is this has happened 3 other times. Once when I was driving down the freeway here in this area, And I look in the back and I see a guy who looked exactly like me when I had that exact car, which is a car that I've only ever seen one like that because it was such a piece of junk. And this same color, same everything. And the guy has long hair like I did when I drove that car. Remember the little green station wagon I used to drive, that piece of junk, Well, that's what he was driving. And it even had the same wounds on it as my car. And I just look in the mirror, he's there. And I'm going, come on, this is impossible. That's me. And I'm looking around to make sure the mirror is not tricking me. And I'm looking at it and I'm waving at him. I'm trying to slow down so I can, hey, pull over. I want to talk to you, whatever. No, he stayed right behind me. If I slowed up, sped up, didn't matter. He never responded to me. It was like he was in a different time and space. It was like I wasn't there. And when I was in the military, remember, I walk into the barracks, brand new, first time, everyone's laughing, and a guy exactly like me walked out the back door. So we all ran out to see where he went. He was gone. And then one time as a principal, I've told you this story. I was a principal of a school, 450 children, and the kindergartners stayed at the school while everyone went to the zoo. Well, while we're at the zoo, they're having lunch. One of the children falls into the lion pit. It's okay because Dr. Gabriel jumped into the lion pit, put the child over his shoulder, ran up the side, saved the children. Everybody's screaming and yelling and clapping. The news comes, but Dr. Gabriel's gone, but they interview everybody. And so this is on the friggin' news, right? And when they get back in the buses, they get off and they go, wow, you changed your clothes. And how'd you get back so fast? And why didn't you stay for the TV? And I'm going, what are you talking about? I didn't know anything about it. This was 300 or more people who I work with every day, hugged me, thanked me, cried on my shoulder, went nuts over this and said it was me. Now, you go ahead and you go figure that. Now, I don't know what it means, but this is what I think. I think that anything's possible in the universe, but to think that meeting that person face to face and sitting down to talk with them, I think would be anticlimactic. I don't think the universe would implode or explode, and I don't think it has anything much to do with me developing my I am through Christ. I think that is a phenomena that is true, and we've heard about this in other stories in history, some of which were as unbelievable as someone encountering ball lightning and wishing to jump into it. Can't imagine you'd ever meet someone like that. Oh, that was me. So was this because I was pushing the envelope? And if I really did see that person, that maybe it would do something strange to me? I don't know. But I would call that not the initiation of earth, water, fire, and air. I would call that the initiation of the I am. And that there may be other components of ourself that we don't understand in different times and different spaces and with different consciousness. I don't know. But one good thing is John knows everything. So John, tell us what the answer is.
Well, you can look back in history and you can find similar types of stories. For example, I didn't get a chance to, I have so many books on Goethe, I don't remember which one of them, but he was walking in the park in Weimar, and all of a sudden he sees himself coming on riding horseback, and he just stood there and watched himself ride by on a horse, and he didn't say anything. He was just so struck by the type of event it was. And so you have these things and you go, well, what is that? Well, in order to be able to wrap your mind around certain things, it's necessary to come to a clear understanding of exactly what is a human being. What is this meat suit that we appear to be occupying, and how does it get here? And if you go into the work of Rudolf Steiner, he talks about the phenomena of a rainbow, like what Douglas was just referring to, the rainbows ending up in the playground. And so he says that the type of phenomena that a rainbow represents is, and I'm paraphrasing, is that because of certain interaction of various forces, the rainbow exists. He says that's the same thing, that's how you exist, is that you are a result of the interaction of numerous forces all converging together. And so there you go, there's Douglas, right? And these things can go through some really peculiar uh, stories. There was these two women. It was back in 1911. They published a book. It was entitled An Adventure, and they wrote it under the pseudonyms Elizabeth Morrison and Frances Lamont. But it describes that they visited the Petit Trianon. It's a small chateau on the grounds of the Palace of Versailles. And they claim to have seen the gardens as they had been in the late 18th century, as well as the ghosts of Marie Antoinette and others. And it became quite a story, but their real names were Moberly and Jourdan. But they describe certain things that were really peculiar, and people contested that story. These are just really kind of ordinary teachers that decided it would be interesting to go to France, and they come up with this story, and they describe it, and they didn't, according to them, they separately had the experience, and it wasn't until later when they were having conversations that they realized that they had both had that type of an experience, and they compared notes, and they're almost identical. But in some of the story, there's this particular bridge there, and everybody said, well, there's no bridge at the Petit Trianon, until finally, many years later, somebody discovered an old map, and on the old map was this bridge that the woman had described. And so what is that? There are times when the best thing you can do is suspend judgment, because you don't have enough information to figure it out. And so don't start defending yourself to come from position and think that you can explain everything. There are things that are going to happen while you're on this journey that you're not going to be able to explain, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's my biography. And I swear I didn't make a lot of these things happen. Now, it's true, probably 51% of the time I was sticking my nose into something, trying to figure it out or whatever. And yes, I was chasing myself. I was trying to figure out who I am and who I've been in the past, because I thought that was somehow pertinent to the present, which it seldom is in my experience. And so, yes, these experiences of seeing the ghosts in these old places, like the Hawaiians in these old villages, they're very real. And we're going to talk a lot about that in the future when I'm going to describe places I've been in Europe, where literally I could stand there and see beings coming and going. And pretty soon I started to notice a pattern of that, oh, well, these beings are actually connected to some of the other beings that I've seen. So I don't know if you see things like this because you have been there, because I've told you the story that, some say I was, I believe I was a reincarnated Hawaiian Ali'i, but I don't know who. And some say I was the star teacher. Well, it is true that when I started at Malama Lama, after, I don't know, a year of horsing around, literally going to every single road on all the islands, any road you can get to in a four-wheel drive, I would go down. Where's this road go? It goes off a cliff. Great. Boom, there I'd go out. Matter of fact, there's a redwood forest. You can talk to people who've lived in Maui their whole life and say, have you been up to Poli Poli? And they'll go, what's Poli Poli? It's just a redwood forest with 200-foot tall trees that happen, about 2,000 of them. You haven't noticed them? No, literally. The only people I know who've ever gone to Poli Poli is because I told them to go there and where to find the road, because the road doesn't look like a road, and you have to have a four-wheel drive to get there. But once you get there, it's an amazing redwood forest on the island of Maui. Okay, so this is always true, that there are things right in front of you that you don't see, and sometimes the door is only unlocked because of your karma, and because you need to see something that others didn't.
Hey,
Well,
can I tell you something, John, that happened that is like blowing me away? It has nothing to do about Hawaii, though. but it has to do with that Tesla purple ray machine. Okay, so we go back into this story. So John got a hold of one of the old ones. It was made in Detroit in 1919. I've been using it, and it's just like mind blowing how well it works. So anyway, I thought, well, that's over 100 years old. I might want one going forward. Who knows where we're all going to land 100 years from now? So I went and I found a new one, and I won't tell who it's made by, but I did my research and I said, okay, this group sounds good. I'm going to get a new one. So the new one came, and I plugged it in. I know how to work these things. I did read the directions, and it didn't work. And I thought maybe it was a plug. I go to another plug. It didn't work. So then I called the company and said, you sent me, don't you check these things? Oh, we checked them, and we checked it, and it was good. Something must be wrong with your end. And the woman was very upset with me. So she got the director of the institute on the phone with me to walk me through the process. And I had my cell phone on so he could hear it, because it makes a noise, as you know. And clearly it wasn't turning on, and it wasn't giving me a blue light. And I tried different plugs. The man was on the other end of the phone. I even showed him, here's my other Tesla device. It works. Hear it? He goes, yeah, I hear it. Well, I don't know why it didn't work. So you need to ship it back to us. They called, and the lady said, it works just fine. And I said, it just works just fine. I tried every little electrical outlet here, but after I hung
So
up
did I.
with her, yes, after I hung up with her, I thought, maybe it's something about me. What if, I'm just speculating now, because some other odd things happened that were very similar to this with some other devices that I use, and they just stopped working. What if on October 4th, that the blast that came through, for those of us who have prepared ourselves on this spiritual journey, it zapped us into another level of, I don't know, beingness? What if I had a woman in the house. She asked me for a healing. Nobody's asked me for a healing in forever and a day. And then she calls me the next day and she's explaining what's going on. I'm going, oh, that's just terrifying. Oh, no, I have no idea what happened to you. But now it's in relationship to all these other devices. Could it be that we actually are lifting our vibration to a point that is, I don't know, it's resonating at a higher frequency than these devices?
Well, in your case, I could believe it, because you're a human dynamo, as if there ever was one. As far as myself, I think I might be going into the state of quiescence. I think I at any point I might just kind of turn into a vapor and float away.
Well, that's fine. But have you heard of anyone who couldn't operate these things and it just didn't work for them?
I have heard of that. I don't recall from when, but I've heard so many stories in my life. But it seems to me it was from what's his name, Charles Fort, who used to collect all these stories that couldn't be explained. And I highly recommend Charles Fort. I think it's very entertaining, light reading, but all kinds of things, frogs raining from the sky, and red rain, and all these various anomalies that things do happen.
Well,
people spontaneously combust. What's
like
that about?
Yes, when you're just talking about things you can't explain. Now, what I think was interesting is that the woman at the company that was scolding me about returning this, and it worked fine for them, I thought, isn't it interesting that she wasn't curious as to maybe why their device didn't work with a particular customer? Just saying. Okay, well, back on topic.
Well, that's very common for me. I walk in a room and the radio turns on, or I touch it and it breaks. That's why you always, you know this. I don't touch devices, right? I just don't go near them because I'm afraid that, I won't mean to do it. But Tyler's so full of energy.
So your middle name is Poltergeist.
Well, of a sort, yes. That these bad electrical magnetic beings who really do want to eat you, they don't like spiritual people. Okay, that's just a fact. So that's why we have the cube. That's why we've got the sigils. That's why the house is all treated and everything, blah, 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 blah. But it's to me, it's the issue of who you are, because certainly Rudolf Steiner talked about in the future, machines won't work unless you have the morality to start these morally developed machines. And some of the machines Tyler's talking about, literally, the violet ray machine is held together with beeswax. So if you use it too long, it'll melt the beeswax and won't work anymore. The harmonious sphere, remember the harmonious sphere that Rick and Dale developed?
I have a picture of it here somewhere.
Yeah.
A big giant picture of it.
It was beeswax.
Big ball.
The thing they couldn't figure out, beeswax. Well, what's beeswax? It's one of the most sensitive substances on the earth to what? The I am of the sun, because bees are of the sun. So in essence, everywhere you go, it doesn't matter where you go. It matters who you are. And that's going to solicit from that environment what you need. I guess I needed to go through all of these things as part of my path. I don't mean to say that everyone needs to go through such dramatic stuff. But yes, we all need to go through that, because here's the image I want to give you today. The universe is like a quartz crystal, but it's a 3D. Of course, it's 3D, and it's like a holograph. And when you break it, each single crystal, no matter how small, is going to be different than the rest. There'll be no two pieces from that fractured crystal that will be the same. But it doesn't matter how small it is. Every one of them will emit the same exact energy. Doesn't matter how big the crystal is, that has nothing to do with it. Every crystal emits 32,768 vibrations per second, no matter how big or small it is. Each of us is a fractured crystal from the universe, and we're individualized. And what our job is to basically do the same thing the universe does, which is give selflessly and love. And then when we're reunited again with that crystal, like I had to put the crystal together with the rubber bands the other day to show you, it's very interesting. I can really feel it being quite different now that it's put back together. But the point is, in the end, we're reunited into that crystal, and each shard of the crystal is going to be different because of what it's experienced, because every crystal, just like water, remembers everything that passes through it. And so when you reunite it, the universe is bigger than it ever was before. It was broken into pieces because each piece brings back its individuality. And that's what we're trying to do. And we don't need to travel anywhere. Who was it? Confucius said the greatest traveler never leaves his backyard. And you don't need to. And I believed that when I was a hermit. And I kind of wanted to stay in Hawaii. I had planned to stay there for the rest of my life and only leave if someone died. I had to go to their funeral. Seriously, that was my intent. And remember, my intent from always, my whole life was never to have children. That was a commitment I made to myself long before I became a priest and was given extraordinary ordination at 14. I looked at the world and said, I would never bring anyone into this mess down here, because heaven is so nice. But anyway, so when I started working at Malama Lama, after all this experimentation and, going through different initiations, wittingly or unwittingly, I became the headmaster of the school. And as I've said, there was a fifth grade. Well, there was a fifth grade that needed a little help. So I helped the fifth grade teacher, and then I helped 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. At the same time I was the headmaster. And then I took up a first grade, took it to second grade, and got very, very sick. And the reason I took up the first grade was because there were two extraordinary students there. I don't know if I've told you about the student who they said was the Maitreya Buddha. And he had a lightning bolt in his head, and one of his eyes is right. His left eye didn't have a pupil. It had a triangle. And if you looked into the triangle, you'd see a cube. Special child. He was like the really, really, the alpha child. And then there was the omega child who was, I hope she doesn't listen to this. She's one of the richest people around, the sole inheritor of one of the companies that every person in America knows, maybe the whole world. She had a son who was so wild. I was the only person who could control him. And I wanted her in the school because she was promised to donate tons of money. And I'm the administrator. I'm like, yeah, I'm building new buildings and stuff. And I was also working with the Japanese, which I mentioned, and they were ready to give us $10 million. We would just draw up the plans, and then they took away the inheritance tax, or put on an inheritance tax in Japan, and the whole Nippon family became pretty much bankrupt. And so we lost all of that. So there were these rich millionaire people there. A lot of them Pakalolo grows, a lot of them famous people from all over the world would come there for variety of reasons to live on the Big Island. I became the headmaster. I loved that school. I loved those children. But by the second grade, I told you I went from 110 pounds to 265 pounds. And the doctor said, well, it was Giardia, and they name it, they tell me it was this and that and this and that. No, I don't know what it was. Couldn't get rid of it. And, I was still, they told me I was malnourished and dehydrated. And, they made me start eating fish, so I believed them and started eating fish and because I was a vegetarian. But anyway, in the end, every time I'd go to the blackboard, and a Waldorf teacher's job is going to the blackboard and drawing beautiful pictures, I'd go to the blackboard, I'd start writing the blackboard, and I'd pass out, flop over to the floor. So this became a routine, and then everyone became very, very disturbed and upset and made me go to the doctor. So I went to the doctor, and the doctor did a CAT scan and found 7 tumors in my head, 6 of them inoperable in the midbrain, 1 of them at the base of my skull. That's what was causing the blackouts. So I'm like, well, this is terrible, but I still want to stay here. So until I was falling over from vertigo and falling into things, and my body was all scarred up from all the times I fell over, I wouldn't listen to reason because I really loved being there. And I don't care that the VOG was killing me. I didn't care that, if I went on one too many adventures that I might not come back. I love the place. And so eventually everyone convinced me. They had a big meeting and said, no, you got to go. And so it came out. And so I said, okay, let me do my research. So I called up the Ida Wegman Clinic in Dornoch and asked them if they would be able to do mistletoe treatments on me. I have all these tumors inoperable. They said, oh yeah, come on over. It cost $20,000 for the treatment. And you have to stay in the place for a month and do this treatment. I'm like, oh, well, I don't have $20,000. So anyway, they threw a party for me and they created a thing called a money tree, right? You ever heard of a money tree? I never heard of it. And people came to the party and they would put the money on the tree with a clip. Well, there were a lot of millionaires in my school and they really liked me. I was a nice guy then in those days. And so this one lady gave 20,000, another friend who actually put up my salary to become the headmaster of the school. He and his wife had paid for everything, and they were very generous to everyone. They gave me 20,000. Somebody else gave me 20,000. So I pulled this down, and the money tree had I forget, $80,000-$90,000. And I went back to these people and said, I don't need this, man. Here, take this back. And he goes, no. You may need it. The treatment, you may need more than one treatment, whatever, go do it and come back. We want you to come back and we want you to get well. So before that, I'd gone over to Oahu, to Honolulu, because while I was on the Big Island, their medical treatments were like shamanistic. No, they were terrible. They were horrible. So I went and did an MRI because I'd only had a CAT scan. So I was passing out every time I laid my head back and my heart would stop. And I'd already had Bell palsy on one side of my face and my body a couple of times had frozen up. And so I'm like, I tell them, no, you can't put me in that MRI machine and put my head there and strap my head down. I'm going to pass out and I'll have a heart attack. They would not listen to me. That's what happened. So I woke up with them pulling the needle out of my chest, shooting me with epinephrine. And they said, are you okay? I said, I told you this was going to happen. So literally I died in the care of doctors. And that's not unusual in this country. But they did find, because they didn't literally my heart had stopped and I'd stopped breathing and the whole thing. But they had gotten some pictures and the pictures said, yeah, we're confirming, you're going to die from this. There's nothing we can do. We could cut out the one at the base of your neck, but we suggest that you just don't tilt your head back and don't lie down on your back when you sleep. It's like these people in Hawaii, the doctors were barbaric, to be quite frank with you. So I went back, packed up, and headed out to the place where my brother had been treated because he had neurofibromatosis, the elephant man disease. And my dad had von Recklinghausen disease, which is another, elephant man probably had both. My dad had one of them. and my mother had acoustic nerve fibromatosis. So the two together got married. Go figure. And so two of my brothers had literally tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of tumors on their skin, under their skin. I have now hundreds, if not thousands, under my skin. And so I went back to that doctor who had diagnosed my brothers and to see if that's what was going on with me.
But as we now know from the earlier adventures, he's not your biological father. So you didn't inherit that part of the equation. And I've seen, I've met members of your family, and you met your one brother. He was literally just covered with these growths, whatever you want to call them. And it's like karma's a very unusual thing, and people do incarnate with the intention of getting things out of the way, and they allow life to bring them through certain karmic events so that they can put it behind them and move it into the future. And perhaps that's part of what's going on with you, Douglas. It's hard to say. But that being said, I like serapeptase. It's the enzyme that silkworms use to dissolve their cocoon, and it's really good for dispersing proteinaceous substances. The full name is serapeptidase.
I have no idea what that's got to do with his bumps.
It helps get rid of them.
It helps get rid of them.
Okay. Well, have you used it? And have you gotten
I
rid
used
of
it.
them?
It didn't get rid of them.
Okay.
No, okay.
His
I
bumps.
just made
I
me think
know,
of
but
it.
I don't want to waste any time on this because you've only got a few minutes here. Douglas, I believe, was he was injected with a lot of pharmaceuticals in the military. And so if he did have an underlying condition because of his mother, because I agree with you, John, that wasn't his father. So his real father. And so, and then it was exasperated because the idiot was trying to dive into volcanoes to breathe the smoke. So he's still got these bumps, but we've worked on them, and they're not so painful.
Yeah, they don't hurt.
Yeah,
which is ridiculous.
All right, let's get over the meds. All right.
Oh.
What is the spiritual context of this? I mean, isn't this a metaphor for everyone who has to go through the fire initiation as you're in spiritual development? You're all going to go through it if you want to evolve. And in that fire initiation, we're letting the dross is burning off.
I think you're right. Every American's being bombarded with over 1.5 million electromagnetic frequencies at this moment, at every type of vibration, and all of them are basically above a certain frequency, which is the frequency of electricity. They're all poison. So when I was in the military and the NSA, I was in rooms filled with so much of that stuff and no windows.
But Douglas, we get it. But what is the spiritual implication of this journey you've taken? Are you a better person for it? Did you evolve as a human being?
Well, only you could say that. I think for myself that that it was obviously necessary, probably because of some terrible karma that I had to go through, that I had established in previous lives that I had to either resolve or you cannot tell about illness because it could be just like John can point out that Rudolf Steiner says that Christian Rosenkreuz went through 10 martyr incarnations where he suffered more than a human being could ever suffer.
And
what's that about? I don't know.
Why do human beings have to suffer on their journey? Why is there suffering?
Wisdom is crystallized suffering, according to Rudolf Steiner. So did I get any wisdom from this? Well, it woke me up enough to realize that I should hold my tongue a bit more and use my experience more than my theories.
How many near-death experiences have you had, Douglas? Have you ever counted?
No.
He's had quite a few. I mean, even recently when we took him to the hospital a few years ago and he was, the last rites are given to him. And I'm in there going, he's not going to die. What are you people talking about? Whatever. Let them do their little medical thing. And then we'll walk out of the hospital a little bit. But everybody is going through this. And so I could tell my stories and they are just as vicious. But I didn't have to walk through a volcano or do that. It wasn't as in the material here and now. It was more in the psychological and the emotional. And I would just want to say to our people who are listening to us, it's okay. You're going through a journey. And especially if you have young people in your lives, like we have children right now that are traveling into places that we're not real comfortable about it. But we also understand they're young people and they're taking their journey. And we have to just be confident that it's a part of their life cycle.
Well, you're right. And I went to Hawaii with a ticket to go around the world. Every place that I was going to visit turned into turmoil, where they literally were capturing American tourists, blowing them up with mines, hand grenades, shooting them, hanging them. Every place that I was going to. So why did I choose at that exact moment, on those exact dates, to be in like Czechoslovakia when it broke away and became the Czech Republic and the Slovak? Why was I going to Nepal when they were gathering Americans and killing them? Why was I going to choose all those places? I don't know.
Well, your stories, as you look back and tell them to us, will probably elicit some kind of understanding of what that is. Now, and just to let our listeners know, an exciting place that we're going next involves John, actually, because, and I don't know if it's the next thing you're going to talk about. Well, we're going to talk about Dascalis and about the healing you received. And it wasn't a healing that was a hands-on. It was through the ethers that healing came. So was this something we can talk about in our next video?
Oh yeah, that's where we're going next. Is
Okay.
the chasing down all these different things to attempt to solve this medical problem that I was being told it's terminal again. It's terminal. You aren't getting out of this one. You will die soon. And I'm like, okay, well,
But you're
what am I
still
supposed to do?
here and
Well,
you look mighty good these
Yeah.
days.
now wait a minute.
Better.
I'm starting to lose track. Okay, you have three. You've been told about three different terminal conditions that you have, correct?
Yeah.
Is that it? Okay. I'm trying to keep track.
Matter of fact, when let's just, I don't want to get into those details, but let's just say that one of them alone, neurofibromatosis, is on the list of 13 terminal diseases that automatically gets Social Security disability instantaneously if you've been diagnosed of that. So I have a few of those. But the point is I'm in Hawaii, and now I've been told all this, and I'm like, okay, so what am I supposed to do with this? Okay, people give me all this money. I guess I should go to these doctors. Money isn't going to stop me getting treatment. So I started to go on that trip. I started packing, and then I had a vision, but this wasn't a normal vision. This was a dream. It happened at night. But the nights before that, for weeks, I had been bleeding so much I had to sleep on a plastic sheet because I would drip blood everywhere. And so no one wanted to be near me because obviously I was in a very bizarre state. And it was like not even the doctors could say what was going on with me. And I'd seen a lot of doctors. So I have this vision. And I wake up from the vision standing on the bed with my arms stretched out, like used to happen to me when I was a teenager, where I was being pulled between light and dark. But that was just the beginning. Then I was all of a sudden up on a volcano, a volcanic escape. But the rivers of magma were flowing all around me. So I grabbed a shovel, a metal shovel, big one, and started using it to pole vault over these rivers because I saw a cube, and the rivers were flowing out of the cube. And so I got to get to the cube for some reason. So I'm jumping over, pole vaulting over these rivers of magma. And in front of me, I see this ancient woman who I'm assuming is Pele because she is so ugly and she is so frightening that normally you would run away. No one would approach a person who looked like this. So I'm chasing after her, and she's showing me kind of a magic route to get there. And the top of the shovel melts right off, and I still got the stick. And so here I am again going into the volcano with a stick, like the staff I carried when I looked through the skylight. And so she goes and she climbs up into the cube. I'm like, whoa, how did she do that? I'm going to do exactly what she did. So I threw the stick down, climbed up this red hot, burning, fiery fountain of magma rivers flowing out of it. But the cube had just a little place where I could climb up and not be in the magma. Climbed inside, and I'm inside of this cube. And there's a fountain of magma coming out, flowing into four rivers. And I'm thinking, oh, this is pretty intense. And then I see the old woman, and she's standing over by the fountain. So I walk over to the fountain, and she turns around, and she turns into a young woman, a young, beautiful woman. And she hands me a baby. And I'm like, a baby? What's a baby doing in here? This is crazy. What is this? So I'm holding this baby, and I'm looking down at the baby, and it's a baby girl. I'm going, this is my baby. And then the woman turns back into Pele and says to me, you have to go back to where God told you and introduced you to your soulmate. What was it, 10 or they told me where. And I realized, oh, I know what that means. I remember that happening. I might have even told that story before, but we'll hear it next time. The point is that I had to go back to Detroit or the Detroit area because I was just told beyond a shadow of a doubt that I had to have this baby girl, and this baby girl was one of the key factors of my entire incarnation. And I have been wrong all my life to avoid having children or to absolutely have disdain for bringing a child into the world. And I was told I was wrong. And I was told basically that's what my illness is about. I've come to Hawaii to hide, and now I have to go back to that hellhole that I didn't want to go back to. Oh, excuse me, Detroit, and find this 12-year-old girl that I met before, where God said, made me stand for 2.5 hours till she walked by with these 5 other friends. And I looked at her and went, what? She's 12. I'm 27 years old. This has to be the devil speaking to me. That's what I thought the first time it happened. I said, it can't be true. It's not possible. And so we'll hear further what happens when I leave the island. And next time, what I did to try to stop all that. And basically, John made sure, after all the different things that we tried, that one thing I would have never considered did in fact cause me to stop bleeding and get up and be able to walk and get so healthy that I became an international consultant after that. So it was another one of those things where, oh, well, you're wrong. It's not terminal.
Well, I can't really take credit for it. The credit all goes to Barbara, dear Barbara, that she had the intuition, and it's kind of funny because, and it's going to be an interesting story. So we're going to save that for next episode. And I hope, though, that in the spirit of our previous episodes, in the words of Rudolf Steiner, that we must eradicate for the soul all fear and terror of what comes toward mankind from the future, and we must acquire serenity in all feelings and sensations about the future. And so with that being said, I want to thank Dr. Tyler Gabriel, our producer, who came up with this idea, and I think it's quite unique in the world of social media to have these kinds of conversations, basically because I don't know, I can't think of other people that are like my best buddy here, Douglas, or Tyler for that matter, or their co-worker, Michael McKibben. So we have some kind of unusual people that have converged just to be able to let people eavesdrop on types of interactions that we have in the hopes that it can have a qualitative change. There's no quantitative thing going on here. You can't use measure, number, and weight to figure all this out. It has to do with the quality of your consciousness and what you're willing to bring, and that you can trust in the ever-present help of the spiritual world. For truly nothing else will do if our courage is not to fail us.